But that was hoisted immediately as we come into the last minute. Boats are well advanced on the line, especially up at the committee boat end.
Yeah, so final 30 seconds here, and you can see them edging up closer and closer to that start line. Again, nearly everyone looks like they're in that front row. Only a few boats just back off the line in that wind void that I was speaking about before. It does look like Gimson and Burnett have their stamp on that pin end, but it's going to be tricky for them to lay. You're seeing them pull off there just a little bit. These guys are right on the edge. They will just hopefully sneak in for that lay, or otherwise they're going to have to jibe out and take a lot of sterns. That's a better angle for you there. 2, 1, we are racing. Tight little lay for those guys. They'll be a little bit slow.
They're going to be slow off the line, and they run the risk of getting rolled to windward down at Gimson, down at the committee boat, the pin end boat.
And it is the Australians, Waterhouse and Downwind, just putting the roll on those guys. Gimson and Burnett, they put themselves under so much pressure going to that start.
That was a really high-risk start for Gimson and Anna Barnett.
And it is Paul Kohlhoff and Stuhlhemmer just above them, the Germans, number 77. They are the boat above the Australians, and they're kind of holding up a bit of a pack. He's sailing quite high, Paul, holding a really tight lane, putting the pressure on the boats to windward. That may reward him.
Yeah, well, he's controlling that group around him, certainly the boats behind, and he's also controlling the Australian boat down to leeward because, of course, you can't tack and clear. Although in that position they probably don't want to. But the real loser off that line has been the team that went into the finals in first position. That's John Gimson and Anna Burnett. They got really blown off on the start line, and right now if they tack they would trail the entire fleet.
Yeah, they're not actually on your screen here. They're having to sail a much lower angle to keep that clear air. You might just be seeing their nose sneaking into the camera there, into the shot there. But you can see they're having to sail much lower to try to get bow even with that Australian team so they can get that clear air and recover from what was a really tight lay on that pin end.
The old pin end start, it's high risk, high reward, or high risk. You're just not going to have any benefit if you don't get that right at pin end start, and they got burnt off the line.
And we're seeing a few of the boats now 50-50 have peeled off. You can see a great shot of that there on your screen. The boats now splitting to the left and right sides of the course. The boats that are out most furthest to the right on your screen there, Damen and Coatland and Kurt Bay and Kinson from Finland. So those guys are pointing out to that right-hand side of the course.
Bit of a pattern emerging, isn't it? The committee boat end boats, they are pretty happy to tack and get over to the right. And I think what's going on, I think there's just a little bit more pressure on the right-hand side, especially from halfway up to the top mark, towards the top mark. So we'll see how this one matures, but there's certainly those two distinct groups as we head up the first windward beat.
I quite like what Olivia said. It makes a lot of sense that the boats on the edges of the course are getting a little bit rewarded as well. A little bit more clear air, a little bit more space for them to move, and they did get rewarded on that first upwind.
It's light. It's very light now. It's actually under 6 knots, just under.
You're on board there with Gibbs and Weiss, and you can see these guys just trying to get every centimetre out of their boat speed there. Little ooches into those waves, close crosses there you can see with Australia just coming over their bow. These guys, it looks... Sometimes sailing, it can look slow from afar, but when you do get on board, you can see how much these guys are doing to keep their boat as fast as possible, making those, even just, half a boat length of speed can get you that cross that gets you that clear air, that gets you around.
The hard centimetre, or the hard metres, hard centimetres in place of what we're seeing here now. If you can put your bow in a dominating position, and that you can see the effect there very graphically. The misjudgment of the start by John Gimson, how much he's paid for that error in the start line, and I mean it was only probably an error of 5 seconds in terms of start line approach, but he really he's paid a big price. Let's monitor where right now. I'd have him very close to last. Let's see where he gets by the end of he's not going to win this race, but just watch out from the recovery, because I think it's the recovery rate. When you get deep, the good teams like like Gimson, they can get back and pull something out of a very compromised situation.
Right now, the tracker is favouring the right-hand side, and when we do look at their speed really closely, they might have just half a knot on those boats that are currently on the left-hand side. So they've just pulled forward just a little bit on the other half of the fleet. But again, as we said, it's early days. One little gust, one shift can turn all of this on its head.
Yeah, the animation, I mean, with the big separation, it can change dramatically as we go back out. It's light, they're not on trapeze. They compress the bow just to try and reduce the wetted surface down aft.
Yeah, it's not the most comfortable position those crews are in there. You can see they're actually clipped on in their trapeze, so they've got a little bit of pressure on the mast as well, and that can sometimes be a little bit helpful as well, stop it bouncing around too much, and then a little bit of a pump here and there.
Yeah, I wonder if that's legal.
I wasn't going to say anything, but...
Yeah, there's certainly pretty defined rules of what you're allowed to do in terms of kinetics.
A little bit cheeky in my mind, but nevertheless. So we've still got those boats who are in the right-hand side. They still haven't made that tack back yet, but most notably it's Paul Daminen out to that side, and also Finland 501. Another guy that's kind of leading out in that right-hand pack is Austria 3, Zajac and Mats. Those guys got their bow forward in that pack, and they're just pulling a little bit further
strong,
away.
Zajac, I mean, the animation's saying he's in second, but just positional-wise, if they're in quite a strong position.
Both of the Australian top teams, Jason and Lisa, and also Nathan and Hayley, they've both put it out to the left there, obviously keeping a close eye on one another.
Yeah, there's
two.
a game within a game being played there with in terms of being over at Olympic selection, but they won't be the only country that are fighting it out. The Italians certainly are. The New Zealanders are. They're playing the game, you know, the longer game in terms of what will happen in Tokyo. Who will get the nod from these very strong sailing programs?
It could be a good time to check in with Olivia here. I'm kind of scratching my head with what's happened to the wind. We're down to 5.5 knots. Olivia, tell us what's happening out there. Any wind, any pressure on either side? What's going on out there?
Oh, good question, Nina. It's really light. We said for the last race it was about 6 knots. Well, I'd say it's probably down to about 4 here. We're sitting on the left-hand side of the course, and we've been watching the battles that have been playing out here, but I'm looking over towards the right-hand side, and they've been popping out, the whole fleet has been popping out around their bow, kind of thinking maybe there might be a little bit more pressure on the right-hand side, or potentially a bit of tidal flow. Weed has been the word of this regatta, and I've seen John Gimson and Anna Burnett pull their foil up out of the water when they were on starboard tack, just checking around. I'm seeing a couple of patches, so there could be a bit of water movement across the course as well. But it's really tricky out here. Although the sun's out, I thought potentially some sea breeze coming in, but it just doesn't seem to have filled in quite yet.
Thanks for that update, Olivia. We've got a great drone shot. It's actually Nathan and Hayley Outeridge. Nathan actually looked up to the drone and gave us a little wave there. So whether that was a get out of my way kind of wave or a hey viewers at home, but
it's a great shot. It really is a great shot. And
for anyone watching, you get a great view of his sail profile as well.
Yeah, his profile and just how much is going on in terms of as the boat moves its way through the waves, how it changes the twist profile, especially the mainsail.
Yeah, and it is usually the skipper holding on to the mainsail in these conditions if the crew's at the front.
It looks like one of my mates from home.
Is that a seaweed?
It's a seal, isn't it?
Yeah. Is that what's getting caught on everyone's foils? You've got a great shot there.
Isn't it great to see?
Wildlife well and good here in Australia.
It's
These
great.
little
great
guys.
To see.
aren't affected too much by the bushfires, luckily for them. So you got a good spread there. That's the view that we've been looking for. You can see there that right-hand pack, they're a little bit advanced forward. It's not much, you know. They might have had half a boat length extra boat speed, and maybe their bow is up just slightly there, but the wind is shutting down, and you can see that from on your screen right now how light it is. You don't want to breathe in this stuff. It is scary. I mean, it can always change so quickly, but right now if that right-hand group have pressure, they'll wait, and they'll wait their time to come back on starboard. But we look there at Nathan Outeridge and Hayley Outeridge. They look very quiet. And right now the whole fleet is actually on port tack. I don't think there's a single boat on starboard as it stands. And so they're all pointing out to that side, and we're seeing just more and more advantage there. That's a great shot of that right-hand pack. Only the guys that got on there really early, they've just started to lift up there, and we're in the top third now. So it's crunch time, especially for those boats out on the corner there. Yeah, and it's time, top mark approach. So if the boats are in the right, then it's about creating a lane so that you can go when you come across on starboard. Of course, you become the marker, and everyone else then, you're the reference that the rest of the fleet will tack on. And we can see Darwin and is that Copeland? The Australians have already tacked. But all you become then is the marker for the rest of the boats to come about and say, well, I'm going to take your lane, and it becomes that snowballing effect. Yeah,
that's why they've gone
right.
so much further past the ley line. So they've said, well, we'll take a bit of medicine, go further than the ley line, and encourage people to tack down to leeward of us.
And you can see the spread there, like all on each other's noses there, all pointing over to that right-hand side now. These guys are just in a drag race. You want every single centimetre, because that might be the difference between a top 10 and a bottom 20, you know.
Certainly it looks like Zajac and Mats, Olivia Mackay, Jason Saunders from New Zealand, they're over there. Santiago Langer and Carranza, they're over there. So then it's about who can pick the right time to come back. Gee, it's quiet.
And a few of the teams have decided that Paul Darmanin and Lucy Copeland's their ley line is a little bit too lean, so a lot of the teams have actually gone a little bit beyond, and that might not be that might be for tide, that might be for a bit of breathing space as well. You might want a little bit of space going into that top mark.
Well, it's minimising your tax, because in this, what are we showing now? Just over 5.5 knots. You do not want to be doing too downspeed tax in that top mark zone.
Absolutely not. One and in is the goal.
There's one boat in the middle coming out of the left, and I'm looking down, 1, 2, 3, fourth boat in. It looks quite nice, whoever that is, in relation to the boats down to leeward of them. So of the boats on port, I like the look of the fourth boat in terms of their bearing on the boats further over, and if they can get bow forward enough, it will mean that they can pick the time.
Yeah, that will be the Australian team, 3-2-9 of Lidl and Hancock there, the Australian team, just a little bit advanced that you can see there on your screen.
They're not going to be certainly leading, but they've just put themselves, they've got options.
It's just about being in charge of your pack, isn't it? If you've got your nose out in front, you've got a few more options. But it does look difficult on port tack here.
Yeah, but generally the group that started up towards the committee boat end, they worked over towards the right-hand side. Now they're coming back on starboard. I think generally they've had more pressure, more wind speed. Interesting that it looks like no one perhaps is right on the ley line. They've all come down short of the ley line. So anyone on starboard will have possibly 2 tacks to do. I'm not. If anyone is on ley line, they'll get a payday. They'll get a benefit.
Yeah, and that's that first team, Japan, there coming in. Whether they're laying or not is a little bit early for me to pick here on the tracker.
I'm not sure if they are. Let's say
it'll be tight if they can sail nice and high and not give away any gauge. And they're the bottom boat. Apart from the Danish team, you can see just behind them a little bit. But that is, I guess, the baseline, as you said, the marker for this ley line.
Yeah, we become the marker.
coming in, and it will be that left pack that's going to take a massive hit coming into this top mark. They are bow down right now and not moving all that fast. So it will be this right-hand pack on your screen. They will be in and away before the left-hand guys come into your picture. Great drone shot. It's slow, but it's still exciting.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very strategic. And I think the teams have played that strategic game, and it looks like certainly on the animation it's saying Zajac and Mutz, and then Newberry, Leidenberg from the US, Langer. So that must be the top mark. I think maybe
these guys are out in front.
I think our data is just a little bit slower than the pictures.
And you can see they're clearing that top mark by a country mile, and that may have something to do with the offset mark.
Offset's a little bit more upwind.
Yeah, so these guys are having to keep the hammer on here, but there we go. It's corrected itself. It will be Kachimoto and Kawata in first place, getting that kite up and clearing our offset mark with Finland, Kurt Bay and Kensen 5:01. They will be in second place. We're at our Ford Whip top mark, our official clothing partner.
Well, that tells the story of the upwind. It is so advantaged on the coming up on the right. They've jibe set, so they've given away a wee bit. Now, will that pay benefit? Of course, the risk is you're having to exit the top mark under the gassed air of all the boats still coming in.
Look at that dirty air. It is a big old move for that team, making that jibe straight away. A few of the teams have held off for that jibe, a few brave souls jibing into that big wind void. It'll be really interesting to see how this one does play out. And quite dense now getting around that top mark.
Yeah, I think they were premature. I think that's look. They're having to, and I'm looking at the Japanese boat who jibed. They're having to dip behind and get down below that bottom mark. Now they can heat it up and try and get back into the wind. Maybe it'll work out nicely for them. But what's going through my mind here is the emergence of Japan.
Yes.
And remember, the Olympics are going there. We're seeing Japanese boats up in the hunt, and that bodes well for that country looking at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, Japan obviously getting an automatic entry into every event because they are hosting the Olympics, and it has given all of the Japanese teams across the board a real, I guess it's re-energising, especially into sailing, that there's more resources being directed at them, more teams showing up at these World Cup events, and where they're quite usually strong in 470s, we're seeing a real emergence in the other classes, so it's great to see another brave soul making that jibe.
Yeah, it's a bit cool, but we'll see. It might work out as we look. So that jibe, though, is showing that it was very costly for the Japanese. Kachimoto and Kirk Bay and is from Finland is showing to be in the lead.
And we do have Newberry and Lindbergh also in the game there, I think showing in second place right now. And McKay and Saunders have had a really good upwind there. Lynn Sentholt, CP Lupek in fourth place as it stands. And good to see Santi Lang and Carranza also up in this race as well. We haven't seen much of them today, so it's good to see them up at the pointy end of the fleet.
Yeah, it's a new group of boats. I mean, the first two races, Zajac and Mutz are always there, or that Sinholt and Lubeck in terms of that overall score. This could be one of these races, I think, Nina, where you survive. If you can get a decent result, and I'm talking the overall, you say, yep, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Because these light air 5-knot races, it can be a bit of a mind game in terms of what goes on, and maybe a little bit of element of luck at times.
And perhaps a little bit of opportunity for the guys a little bit further back, who didn't have a good upwind. We know that everyone has been favouring the right. We saw a few teams take a bullet and take that right when all the gas was there. But as all the teams get around the top mark, it does open up a little bit of an opportunity for some of the guys at the back of the pack to take a stranglehold of that right-hand side for this downwind. Checking in with who those boats are. Waterhouse and Darmenon have done an early jibe out to that side. We've also seen Jones and Hamilton, Australia 403, take that jump, as well as Gibbs and Weiss, USA 23, are out there as well. So, you know, a little door of opportunity opening up. If it is that right-hand side that's paying specifically, or perhaps, you know, that shift is gone and been done, we won't know.
I think it was pressure. As much as the shift, the wind direction looks, it's out of the zone of southeast, but what we are seeing is some big pressure differences over the course. And it's light. It's right at the bottom end for these boats. It's actually lighter now than what it was at the start of the race.
Yeah, we are reading down to 4 knots.
It'll be
now.
one of those races where if you're in the lead, you're very, very nervous, even if you've got a lot of lead, because of the fickle nature of the conditions.
And we're seeing, you know, the top group has stayed relatively stable, but a real shake-up in the rest of the results, and it's flicking all over the place, depending on who gets a little zephyr of breeze or a little, you know, whiff of clear air. These guys are just battling it out. And as you saw, like, we're not even foiling. We're 2 hulls in the water. We're not even doing the wild thing here. It is slow and steady, but still a bit of a dogfight out here, making sure you can keep your bow ahead, stay out of trouble,
And
find a lane.
And try and find the pressure. Try and find those dark patches on the water that means that the boat can get powered up, get pressure. And then, because of the high-performance nature of these things, a boat that's in phase with the wind and the wind speed, they'll make massive gains over boats around them that are really sitting quiet and become very, very vulnerable for attack.
Yeah, a little increase of wind of 2 knots could make all the difference here for these guys coming in.
Newberry and Liebenberg from the US look well bow forward in the middle. I think the Japanese team have paid for that early jibe. You can see them right out in the animation, right over on the left.
Yeah, they definitely took a lot of pain initially.
To get under the boats and round that mark.
I'll be keeping my eye on those guys just to see how it shakes up for them if they're getting rewarded now as we speak. But it's definitely those guys that have just punched forward in the middle of the fleet that look like they have a little bit of an advantage. If anything, choice. You know, if you've got your bow ahead of the other boats, if something changes, you have first access to it. For those guys. And so, and then on our screen here, McKay, Saunders and St Holt and Lubeck making their way in as well. Those guys have gone the furthest into that left-hand side. And their angle looks like a little bit of an advantage here. They're pointing a little bit closer to that bottom mark.
Which would indicate that there would be pressure. They'd be in maybe in a little bit more wind. Certainly when you look across, Olivia Mackay and Jason Saunders from New Zealand, St Holt and Lubeck behind and to windward of them.
And some boats right out on the corners as well.
It's so quiet.
Yeah. We might cut here to Olivia, see if she's out there, to see if she can give us any insight. I want to know, Olivia, what's happening with the clouds out there? Has it cleared? Is the sky clear out there? Any pressure on the horizon?
Hey, Nina. Look, the clouds are moving quite high, just a little bit above the surface. So there's potential that there might be a little temperature inversion. So a little hot layer underneath the layer of cloud that is breaking up, but just might not be allowing the breeze to come down onto the racecourse and onto the water. So I'm looking up at the clouds and there is a little bit of movement. It looks like it could come down, but the only reason I can think of why it wouldn't is there a little temperature inversion, so it's just not punching through a little invisible barrier and not making it to the racecourse.
Olivia, I'm looking from here and I'm starting to see glassy spots. Is there any pressure on the water around you if you look up, looking down the course?
Yeah, I'm looking out towards the main shipping channel that's here on the bay, and so the left-hand side of the course, there's a couple of red spinnakers out behind us, and they're moving at a faster rate than the boats on the right-hand side if you're looking upwind. So there is a little bit of movement across, and I think it's really just puffs coming through that might just be a little bit of localized pressure. So obviously the right-hand side one upwind on that last upwind, but I don't believe that that is the winning path for the downwind. As you said, it does look glassy over on that side. It's just whether this left-hand side looking upwind has enough pressure to stay on the course. It could just move away from the course, and then the boats out on that side could just be left out there in another glassy patch.
Thank you for that update, Olivia. I'm getting nervous here.
Well, what's interesting here is another Olivia Mackay and Jason Saunders. They have come sort of down the centre of the track with Sen Holt and Lubeck, and they are going to cross the fleet. Looks like they're going to sneak around the bow of Newberry from the US.
Yeah, there are a few shifts. If you're looking at the tracker, following along at home, I'm watching the leaderboard just invert itself.
It's just if one boat gets in, in pressure, and in fact, this group now, and Olivia was talking about it, the Svensson and Darkhammer from Sweden, who are even further to the looking down the track. To the right, they might come into play.
But what we're seeing here is a bit of a condensing of the fleets. The two sides have kind of merged in the middle. So we're seeing, maybe not so much on your screen right now, but we'll be seeing very shortly lots of crosses. But with the majority of the fleet on starboard jibe right now, making their way back into the centre, but we've still got a third of this downwind to go.
Yeah, it's slow. It's really slow. Wind speed, 3.7 knots.
And I mean, this is when the race committee is starting to think about it.
It's exactly. I was starting. Is this fair? And of course, the race committee's role is very clear. The racing needs to be fair, and if it's not fair, they do have the tools in their toolbox to abandon and start again. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure who the race officer on this. So I know David Campbell James is here, and he's very good. All the race management guys, they unsung heroes. They do a hell of a job.
In the world
they're out there, and their role is to put on fair racing at this very, very high level, and they do.
Yeah, and they do a great job. You know, whilst this race may not have been started, if it was started in these conditions,
I don't think they'd have started.
No, absolutely not. It is. We're down to 3 knots flat there. Absolutely no more than 3 knots. So,
but I'm sure they'll be starting to look and wow, look at the
Denmark on the screen though. They're pulling a little bit of air in their kite. They might just be shooting forward. That could be a huge gain, and it's just a Zephyr.
Yeah.
You know, it can make the difference between 20th and 5th in
you
racing
get a roll
like this.
on. Apparent wind comes forward. And then you create apparent wind speed, the boats will just start to...
and they have just pulled themselves into 4th place as it stands there with that nice little Zephyr and a jibe there too, there on your screen.
Bottom mark gate exit or approach and exit will be interesting because the fleet is actually quite compressed.
Yes.
So with the angle change at the bottom, especially if you jam the boat round the mark, which you would not want to do, you lose momentum and then you just get covered up. So I think this bottom mark, the approach and then the exit from the mark, the bottom mark gate
and it is
selection will probably will determine the winner of this one as long as the race plays out.
And the top 4 are currently bow to stern now, pointing at the right-hand gate as it stands. So those guys are just picking a lane, a nice safe one, finding a bit of space.
Yeah, that's still one and in.
Yeah.
For that group.
Yeah.
So if we look at the group, they're still moving from left to right down towards the bottom mark gate. Maybe Sinholt and Kirk Bay, they might lay it, although I somewhat doubt. If I look at the lay line, the animation line, they're sailing hotter than that. What's important here is that they keep speed on. Doesn't matter what angle you're sailing, just keep the boat moving through the water. And if you have to do another manoeuvre, but effectively you start jibe upwind angles, isn't it? Downwind.
Yeah, it's just having flow over the foils especially gives the skipper a little bit of control over the boat as well. As soon as you park your boat, you just lose control of it, and you have to be so patient to build it again. So, you just don't want to move on days like this. You sit
Finesse.
still and you hold your breath, and you're hoping for the best. But sometimes it does, just in this lighter stuff, it just does come down to luck. And I think you'll find every sailor will tell you, because when the wind does shut down, you're kind of locked into that spot within the range that you can move your boat until the next pressure comes in. Hopefully there's something coming.
But right now it looks like from the US, Newberry and Liebenberger, then Mackay and Saunders from New Zealand, Zajac and Mutz are third, although bow to bow with the Japanese. Saw the Japanese, Tajimoto.
It's hard to call because it's
hard to
changing
call,
all the time.
but the boats aren't moving,
No.
and there's no wind, so it doesn't take much. And there's going to be a big congestion.
Abandon. There it is.
Well, we talked about it.
Oh, I'm
Well
taking
done.
a breath of...
So this race has now been abandoned. The conditions are such, and we can see, just look at the flags. She's got old limpy draws, so she's been abandoned, and the race, it is David Campbell James, and I wouldn't expect anything else from him. If the racing is not deemed to be fair, pull the pin.
And they've got a bit of a decision to make now. Obviously this big lull in the breeze wasn't forecasted and wasn't expected, and they have sent the 49er fleet out. You can see them in your background there. So it's going to be a big decision to make if they choose to be patient and try to get this third race of the day out for the Nacras, or if they're running out of time, they'll go straight to
Still
the 49er
early.
class.
We're local time, we're what, 20 to 2? I think he'll wait a bit, won't he?
Oh, absolutely. You'd hope that he's patient.
And we've got plenty of daylight.
The beauty of sailing in Australia.
Yeah, it's a lot of
daylight.
What is, do you know, sunset here?
Yeah, so it's no earlier than 7. So
So it's 7 o'clock. So
Yeah.
we've got heaps of time.